downtown where you can get a date for 50, 60, 70, even 80% off the original social marketplace price. Coming to paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. Take a trip into the macabre world of goth modeling in the new millennium in this all-new Spinsterella story. Pre-order your copy of Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere. Coming to paperback and e-readers, Esteem Season of the Witch Girl. The aspiring angel takes on a wicked teenage witch in this action-packed all-new Esteem series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Esteem Season of the Witch Girl at Amazon.com and other online booksellers. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. Actress Tracy Ellis Ross says she dates younger men because the men of her generation have too much toxic masculinity.
I mean, we've talked about this, that often I date younger men. And a lot of it is because...
Let's stop on that, folks.
Oh my God, we had a great dinner. We had a great dinner, by the way, where across the table, your husband goes, "But why?" And I said, "Well, maybe because I can."
Yes, Parish. This is what I'm saying. Tales from Tracy's.
It's fun. It's very fun to share.
Tracy tale.
But
I'm sorry.
But one of the reasons, though, that because I had to ask myself that question, I was like, "What is this about?"
Yeah.
Because I want a partner, and so often, and it's not just that I'm older. I'm also very embodied. I am a full, very whole person who knows myself, who is in charge of my life, and who lives a very full, just robust life. So it's not just age, it's like life experience and sort of a difference. But I had to ask myself the question, why? Why does this keep sort of coming up other than they're hot and gorgeous? There's that. But a lot of men my age are steeped in a toxic masculinity and have been raised in a culture where there is a particular way that a relationship looks. And anything that starts to smell of that for me, I did enough of it where I was controlled and felt like I was a possession or whatever those things were, or prize and I have no interest in it, and I will not do it again.
Actress Tracy Ellis Ross says that she prefers to date younger men because the men of her generation were raised in toxic masculinity. Now, Tracy Ellis Ross made this statement on Michelle Obama's podcast, and as she made this statement about wanting to choose to date younger men, she showed me that she is not having a problem with men at all. No, what the big problem is with Tracy Ellis Ross is that she's a woman in crisis that's part of the pool of 70% of black women who are single, and I go in depth on all the issues that women like Tracy Ellis Ross has in my two books, The Woman Crisis and Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. Now, Tracy Ellis Ross's big problem is that she's been raised in a culture of feminism, and as she's been raised in this culture of feminism, like many of us Gen Xers, this 52-year-old woman wants us to believe that she needs to go out here and date younger men because the pool of men of her generation had toxic masculinity. However, I have to call BS on that because as a member of her generation who is going to be 52 in September and has been a part of that generation, I can tell you that one of the reasons why many women like Tracy Ellis Ross are choosing to date younger men isn't because the men of our generation had toxic masculinity, but it's because many of us, both male and female, were raised in this culture of feminism, and this culture of feminism did damage to both boys and girls, leading to boys and girls both growing up to become men and women in crisis. Now, as a Gen Xer like Tracy Ellis Ross, I can tell you one of the reasons why she's dating younger men is due to the way she was raised in this culture of feminism, because in this culture of feminism, many of the girls who were a part of Generation X, they were raised not to be grow up to become women, but they were raised to become feminists. And these feminists basically were socially engineered to believe that they were one, superior to the men in their societies, and two, believe that men and women are the same. And as they were raised with these ideals, they basically were taken out of the foundations of God's natural order, because in God's natural order, God created men and women to understand their roles in His order. And Tracy Ellis Ross basically didn't know her role in God's order ever since the day she was born. No, she wasn't understanding about her role as a woman in God's order to be a helpmeet to a man, nor did she understand that her role was to serve the man, and by serving the man, she would submit to the man, again, paying honor and respect to God, because under feminism, many of these women, they were taught that, again, they could serve themselves, and as they were taught they could serve themselves, they did not see a man as somebody who was their leader or their head. No, they saw themselves as someone who could basically look to lead the man. And this is where Tracy Ellis Ross started to have her problems as related to men, because she wasn't raised to understand how things works as related to relationships in God's natural order. And while she sits there and talks about toxic masculinity, she couldn't see how the toxic feminism was leading to her having problems with relationships, that would make her incompatible with a man, because a feminist is not someone who can be compatible with a man. No, a feminist isn't compatible with a man because she wants to be the head, she wants to be the leader, she wants the man to submit to her. And that's where Tracy Ellis Ross runs into the toxic male, the toxic beta male, because the toxic male basically was a creation of feminism, because what the feminists wanted to do was create a kinder, gentler, softer man. They wanted to create this kinder, gentler, softer man who would be looking to serve the woman and submit to the woman. Unfortunately, what happened to many women of my generation is that they became deeply frustrated when they got that kind of guy. They became deeply frustrated when they ran into that kind of guy, because naturally, when it comes to a woman as God created her, He created the woman to want to be with a man who was a leader, a man who was a head, a man who would go out here and get the direct connection to God and look to follow His lead and look to be the leader under God. That's the man that women naturally aren't wanting to have. But with feminism, they wanted to create this softer male. But the softer male, again, many of these women become frustrated with and have no respect for. But the great irony is with this whole situation with Tracy Ellis Ross is she doesn't see that it's the man that you say is toxic basically is the toxic male that was created by the feminist. And the critical question I have to ask Tracy Ellis Ross is, when you say about this toxic male, who created that toxic male? That toxic male was basically created by women like your mother, who wanted to create this kind and socially engineer this kinder, gentler, softer male. And that kinder, gentler, softer male basically is the guy you're having problems with, because you did not want to follow the lead of a man. And what you want to do is go out here and say that it's toxic masculinity without ever looking at what created the toxic male. The toxic male was not the man created by God or the man that has a father in his life, but you wouldn't be able to find that kind of man, because a man with actual masculinity a feminist is not attracted to, because feminists don't want to submit to that kind of man. No, many feminists don't want to submit to that kind of man and follow his lead. And what's even sadder than that is, as they don't want to submit to that man, they buy into the rhetoric of white feminism. White feminism tells these women not only are men and women the same, but that many women have all the time in the world. And that lie basically is the one that has Tracy Ellis Ross jammed up at this point. She's jammed up at this point at 52 years old, because she believed that the lie that she had all the time in the world, when in actuality, when it comes to both men and women, we have a limited window to choose a partner, and the time to choose your husband or your wife is when you're young. And when it comes to women, the time to look to choose a husband is when you are in your prime years of 18 to about 26 years old. But Tracy Ellis Ross was too busy building an acting career to ever think about trying to find a husband. No, she was out here in her prime years. Again, there was a pool of men basically looking to chase her, and she had no interest in those men. No, she thought she could go on a quest for a better deal. And now that she's aged out of the social marketplace, now she's basically sitting there thinking that she can go into a pool of younger men. After sitting there and making this statement, she's sitting there thinking she can go into that pool and come out with somebody better. But the whole thing is, she's going to get a raw deal, because she's aged out of the social marketplace, and she aged out a long time ago. And she wants to talk about toxic males, but the whole thing is, you were stuck with these toxic males because you didn't want to choose the men. You thought you could get somebody better because you bought into social constructs created by Madison Avenue in Hollywood, such as the quote-unquote good man. And you were looking for this perfect guy with all these rippling muscles and six-pack abs, 6-inch Mr. Woody, and six-figure salary. And we're not finding anything as you got older, and you reached a point where you basically aged out of your generational pool, and the only guys who are left in that generational pool were old Pookie, old Ray Ray, and Romy Rome. And after you wound up in that social marketplace with old Pookie, who was still living with his mama and still waiting for her to be able to borrow her Buick LeSabre when she wasn't going to church, old Ray Ray, if he had time, could go out here and on his security job and could take you out for some church's chicken, or basically some shrimp fried rice and some chicken wings. Or Romy Rome, who basically looking to go out here and get some draws based on him getting some White Castles or some Popeyes chicken. Those were, and he drove the rusty Cutlass with the rusty quarter panels with a Pendergrass tape stuck in the 8-track cartridge. I mean, this is the pool of guys who were left for women like Tracy Ellis Ross and Tia Mowry and many of these other black women who basically wound up finding out that their social marketplace value dropped lower than a $5 food stamp without the book. Basically, their social marketplace value dropped like a rock, and as they enter the social marketplace and see that they're still there and there's no real prospects, that's where these women think that because they're still indoctrinated into feminism, they can turn the tables. They think they can turn the tables and find a younger man. However, this is where they wind up never really acknowledging the rude awakening that they have, because many of those younger men, and I talk about this in my book, The Woman Crisis, many of these younger men really ain't interested in no old woman. No, they're not interested in no old woman, because they see the only guys who really would be dealing with her again are usually young simps who basically thinking they can go out here and get an older woman, basically because they want to go out here and say that they were able to go out here and get with this older woman and have that as a badge of honor. But the whole thing is that's something that they do to get a notch in their belt. But the most regular guys, again, are looking for women in their age range and looking for women in their age range because they understand time is precious and you want to find a woman who's suitable for a wife. But when they look at women like Tracy Ellis Ross, they see her as a woman who's suitable for a fling, and she's thinking, oh, I'm dating these younger men, but these younger men basically at this point are using her for it's easy to get her to drop the skid mark jockey draws and be able to put the carbon rod in the atomic waste reactor for some nuclear fusion they can brag about to their friends, and to also use her as a sugar mama to be able to go out here and buy their Air Jordans, their PS5s, and other assorted items. Basically, what's happening to Tracy Ellis Ross is she doesn't see that as she's aged out of the social marketplace, she's still attracting the same type of toxic males, because when it comes to a man ain't really checking for no 52-year-old woman who basically got everything as related to her as, instead of values and character. She may have a lot of material things, but she ain't got no values and ain't got no character. And most guys, again, in her age range who have actual masculinity charged her to the game over 25 years ago. Most actual masculine men ain't really checking for no Tracy Ellis Ross, because we know that Tracy Ellis Ross is basically a resident of Bust Downtown, and a resident of Bust Downtown whose social marketplace value has dropped 50, 60, 70, even 80% off the original social marketplace price. And if she's out here still in this social marketplace, she's not wife material, because most of the women who were wife material, they were snapped up when they were anywhere from about, I'd say, 18 to about 26 years old. Most of those women were snapped up in the social marketplace, and usually a lot of those women were scoping out guys when they were in college. Most of those women were scoping out guys they wanted to get with, and they got their husbands. And that's another thing many feminist indoctrinated women like Tracy Ellis Ross don't know how to do, because they were never taught how to compete in the social marketplace to look for a husband, because they were miseducated to look for a man. I talk about this in my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. They were taught to look for a man, but God never said to look for a man. No, He told you to go find a husband. And many of these women don't know how to find a husband due to the way they were raised in feminism. And as they were raised in the feminism, they were looking for these kinder, gentler, softer men to be leaders, but they couldn't lead because they were taught to follow. And again, these women, talking about, all these men are toxic. No, who created the toxic males? Again, critical question I'm repeating as related to Tracy Ellis Ross. Who created the toxic males? Because many of your mamas were sitting there talking about how they could raise a boy to become a man, and as you were raised alongside those boys, basically you're finding out that the boys that your mama raised were not ready to be men. So you sit there and talk about toxic males. No, the toxic males came from mama, who was the first teacher, who learned from feminism she did not need a man because she's strong and independent. And that's why you're alone right now. You're alone right now because you were taught to be strong and independent, not need a man. And now you're looking for a boy to have a codependent relationship with, because you want the younger man, not because you want to follow his lead, but you want somebody who will submit to you in the way a child will submit to you. And when it comes down to these women like this, they don't see how they're in a paradigm of failure, because no man wants to be in a relationship that's codependent where the woman has all the power. One, no man wants to be under a woman who sees him as a child. No man wants to be with a woman who wants him to submit to her. And you don't want that at all, because you'll see that men as weak. And you're only looking for these younger guys because you're still looking to try to make this power dynamic work. But this power dynamic created by feminism does not work. it does not work at all. No, this power dynamic created that many black women like Tracy Ellis Ross has learned. Again, this power dynamic basically ends in failure, and it ends in failure for those women. And that's why many of the women of my generation, Generation X, are single, to the point where we've got 70 to 80% of black women single, because they received a miseducation that led to them becoming women in crisis who are still trying to make a square peg fit in a round hole, and still trying to make things work when the definition of insanity is trying to do the exact same thing and expect a different result. The definition of insanity is still trying to think that you can go from the pool of your men of your generation to a new pool of men, and that you're going to be able to make things work, and still not seeing that the whole thing that you've learned is a whole miseducation, because you're still out here dating, when the whole thing is that dating does not lead to marriage. No, you need to have a courtship. You need to have people in your life that can vet these guys, so that you don't waste your time dealing with these, again, beta males, these pookies, these guys who are not fit for manhood. And again, because Tracy Ellis Ross got a miseducation as related to the social marketplace, this is why her life is a mess. And sadly, she doesn't see that her life is a mess because she didn't understand her role as a woman in God's order, because feminists told her that role was sexist. Feminists told her that being a part of God's order demeans her. And again, she's now out here wandering in this wilderness at 52 years old, still wandering in this wilderness, still trying to figure out how life works as related to relationships, and still not seeing that she basically missed her chance at a man and is now dealing with the same pool of males, but just younger. She's still dealing with the same pool of pookies. Again, she's gone from dealing with Pookie in her prime to dealing with old Pookie to now dealing with Pookie's son. Again, a vicious cycle as related to Tracy Ellis Ross, who has not picked up that she's in a paradigm of failure. That's a vicious cycle, and that's what's happened to many of these modern black women. Many of these modern black women haven't figured out that they're in a paradigm of failure, because they have not really learned anything about God or God's order. At 52, she's still looking for a person she can control and be able to get free dinners and free drinks. Again, a man who will not lead her. Again, a boy who wants to be controlled. And again, that gets really tiring for a younger brother out here. A younger brother gonna get tired of a woman trying to be his mama. And that's when she'll realize she's got another beta male, because again, masculine man don't want nothing to do with no woman who's older than he is, outside of possibly getting her to drop the skid mark Victoria's Secret draws, and again, getting some draws, and again, going out here bragging to his homies about how he smashed this older lady. Again, not respecting her, and again, she's not in a place where she can get a respectable relationship. And sadly, there were so many girls of this generation, because I grew up in this generation, who wound up on this paradigm of failure. They went on to become single mothers. They went on to have multiple divorces, and some never ever got married. They just basically wound up with multiple dudes just going out here, and again, going out here smashing and dashing. And as they got older, they still never figured out where things were going wrong, because they followed feminists like Oprah Winfrey, they followed feminists like Terry McMillan, and followed simps like Steve Harvey. And as all these people made money selling these poor women books, they continued on wondering why things in their life weren't working. Well, things in your life ain't working because you're not following the order of God. You're not in the order of God, so that He can go out here and help you learn how to work in God's order, again, you have to submit to God. And this is what feminists don't want to do. And again, what's sad about Tracy Ellis Ross is, again, she's still out here thinking that she's making a statement that's really making her look good, but optically she's looking very embarrassing. She's looking embarrassing in this situation because now you're saying you're dating, again, all younger men, and that shows that you just missed out on all the guys of your generation. And the same thing for they say one of these rappers, Jadakiss, says he was dating younger women, and again, basically he missed out because most of us Gen Xers, we were again bamboozled and misled by feminism, bamboozled and misled to believe that we could go out here and again have the men and women again be equal when God created actual roles for us, and we didn't learn our roles. And because we didn't learn our roles, this is why we've got older people who grew up and again never had that good relationship. And instead of us having relationships that were healthy, we wound up becoming men and women in crisis. And again, a lot of us basically on this road where we thinking we're going somewhere when we're going nowhere at all. And that's the sad state of Tracy Ellis Ross. Again, 52 years old, still in a paradigm of failure, still looking for a man to be, a boy to be a man, but a boy can't be a man without a man in his life. And if he doesn't know what a man is, basically, you're not dealing with a man who's ready to be a partner. No, you're not ready to deal with that man because you don't want to be led by that man. You don't want to be checked by that man. You don't want a man to establish standards for you. No, what happens with women like Tracy Ellis Ross is they look for these baby boys and again wind up in a situation where they continue to remain a woman in crisis, still trying to make a man out of a man in crisis. Now, if you want to learn how to identify the dysfunctional behavior of a feminist indoctrinated woman and learn how to break out of that pattern, you can pick up my book, The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Woman Crisis at other online booksellers like Craft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to learn why 70% of black women are single and stuck in a paradigm of failure, you can pick up my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single, on Amazon.com, along with The Woman Crisis, and find in both of those books how to break out of these patterns and learn to have a more healthy life and lead to more functional relationships. And if you also want to break out of this pattern, you need to read your Bible, read the Word of God, and learn about the actual role of women. That will help you a long way. I mean, this will help you understand your role as a woman and learn about God's order. This is something that you, again, nearly need to go out here and read because the Most High gave you a role, and the more you learn about that role, the better you will be as a woman. And if you want to see me do more videos taking celebrities to the barbecue like Tracy Ellis Ross, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA, from the Black Boule, in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' A Thorn in My Side in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteem, Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem, Horror in the Hamptons in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.